What's going on, YouTube? How are y'all doing tonight? So, are you a gun snob? What makes you a gun snob? It's the worst thing about the gun community, gun snobs, when you already have a whole group of people against you already. How can a gun snob affect someone that's new to shooting and want to get in the 2A community? Let's talk about it. So, to give you a little input on my experience, I remember when I was first getting into firearms, and I was going around asking people that was pretty knowledgeable, or at least I thought they was pretty knowledgeable about firearms, and they would always ask me what I'm getting, and I was like, I really don't know, and everybody was like, at the time, everybody was like, get a Glock, get a Glock, and I was like, I've held a Glock, I didn't like a Glock. I was like, it got to be something else out there. I definitely didn't want no revolver, and so I ended up going to my local gun shop, like downtown, and me and the owner, he's a blacksmith, but he owned the gun shop. Me and him had talked, and I was just telling him, I was like, look, I don't really want a Glock. I don't want a revolver, but I want something that I can conceal carry. And that's when he introduced me to the Smith & Wesson Shield single stack. I remember getting the gun, and I went back and told people, hey, I got this gun, and the first thing they asked me was, what was it? And I told them it was a Smith & Wesson Shield, Smith & Wesson. And the first thing they said was like, oh, you got a bad gun. You could have got a Glock that held 10 rounds for such and such. And then instead of them just congratulating and just trying to encourage me, to maybe go to want another firearm down the road, then they asked me about the ammo. I said, oh, well, he sold me these Sig Saucer V Crowns. And they're like, oh, that's the worst ammo. You don't need that, blah, blah, this and that. But in honesty, if I would sit there and let them down me or down my purchase, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now with my gun collection. In life, you got people that you never can please. So that's pretty much what a gun snob is. Like, no matter what equipment you get, no matter what firearm you get, you're not going to be able to please that person. So why would you put the effort and time in to get that recognition from that person? A gun snob can really make somebody not want to be part of the 2A community. They might have questions, but they might not want to answer because they have dealt with a gun snob and they just think everybody that's part of the 2A community is like that. I'll give you another example. My partner, me and him, we went to a gun show. And he told me he wanted to get an AR. And I said, okay, cool. And I told him pretty much the layout of the gun show because every year it's the same layout. And I said, it's going to be when you walk in, it's going to be a table, nothing but ARs. And I said, but they're going to be really overpriced. And they're going to have them fixed up real fancy for you, though. And I said, people that don't know what they're doing, don't know what to look for, they'll go to the table and buy every time. I say just wait and make sure you look all the way around the gun show before you make a purchase. And lo and behold, me and him, we started out walking in together and pretty much stayed together while we was at the gun show. Then I was like, well, I gotta go use the restroom. And I went to the restroom, and lo and behold, I called him on the cell phone and I said, where are you at? And he's like, oh, I'm over here at this table. And I looked over there because the restroom is right there by that first table that I told him about. I look over there. I said, "What are you?" And I walked over there and I said, "What are you doing?" And he's like, oh, "I'm finna buy this." And he showed me what it was, and the upper was real nice, but the lower was one of them Omni Max or hybrid lowers or P80 lowers, put it that way. And I said, "Are you sure that's what you want?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, go for it, you know." And like I said, it was overpriced, but he was happy, and it was like I'm not going to steal his joy for being happy, you know. So I guess a couple weeks later, me and him end up going to the gun range, and he was ready to shoot, and we got in the booth, and his gun kept jamming. Didn't know why whatsoever, and remember I had already had a couple ARs, and one of them was one of them hybrid ARs. The lower was one of them hybrid like P80 lower. So, but that one right there, which I'll show you later on, um, it just ran for me. Like I've never had a problem out of that AR. So he took it out there to the counter and asked the guy could he look at it? And the guy said, "Yeah, I can look at it." So the guy behind the counter, he supposed to be like part-time sheriff deputy or something. I don't know. So he get the gun and he just started talking trash about it. He's like, "This is what's wrong with it. Is your lure?" He said, "This is just trash, trash. Just throw the lure away and just get you something new." And he was looking at me, and I could see that he was disappointed about the guy talking about his AR like that. So we went back in there and started shooting again. I said, "Man, it probably just need to be oiled." I said, "You haven't oiled it," because he didn't know the first thing about the AR. I said, "You probably need to just oil it real good and run a couple not full mags through it." And then I looked at his mag, and it was I don't want to say P mag, but it was some kind of mag. And I just so happened had an extra metal mag. I said, "Well, try this mag right here." And sure enough, that fixed the whole gun, right? I mean, the whole problem right there. And but he did oil it and everything. But that magazine that I gave him, and I just told him, "Hey, you can have that magazine. I can get some more. There's no problem." But at the same time, I think he was still disappointed, and I was like, "That's no way to be with somebody, when they come to ask you for help, But that's a gun snob. He had his nose turned up to his gun, and to this day, and this been 3 years ago, and to this day, he said he haven't shot his AR no more since that day that we had went to the range. And like I said, it's been like 3 years. And you gotta use what you got. I know myself, I have been accused of being a gun snob. And trust me, I'm not no gun snob whatsoever. I got accused a few years ago because it was a group of ladies I work with, and they were saying they wanted handgun. And I was like, oh, "Okay." And they was like, what handgun would I suggest? And I was like, "Well, the first thing I asked, I said, have you ever shot?" And they like, "Yeah, I have." And then when I asked them what have they shot, they couldn't really remember what they shot. And so my next question was, how much money are you? And that's when they was like, "Oh, we know you like them expensive guns, so we don't got that much money." I said, well, I said, you got to start somewhere, but I'm not no gun snob. I said, I didn't start out with a lot of high end guns, and what I do have, like I told them, I don't consider them high end. And and one of them was like, well, a couple weeks ago, you just said you spent 18 carats, 1,800 carats on a gun, and I was like, well, I said that's just an entry level 2011, and I said I got a bunch of extra mags with it, and I got a red dot that was specifically that supposed to go on to that. I said, but that's the only reason I spent that much, and it was something I wanted. But I said, it's your first gun. And I said, is this going to be your only gun, or is this going to be just your first gun and you want to get some more down the line? And they were like, oh, I just need one gun. And I said, all right. So I said, and they told me the price. And I said, well, you can get some good guns, firearms for that price, So I helped one get one. And then the other two, I haven't heard nothing else from. But anyway, but I've had tours. I've had a lot of Turkish imports. Had a Ruger. Right now, this is what I carry on a daily. Got a video on that for my simple everyday carry. And as you see, it's clear, no magazine. We're in a safe, controlled environment. But yeah, that's what I carry. It's a Ruger 380. But yeah, you don't have to have the most expensive gun. No matter how much your gun costs, as long as you get out there and put the effort in and training, you can somebody can have a $3,000 gun, but they just got the gun with no training, no skills, and you got a $215 gun, but you go out there every day and train. Anytime you get a chance to, you're shooting, using your iron sights. You don't have to have all the bells and whistles either on your gun. But you're out there doing the training, put in the work, you can outshoot anybody. How about them gun snobs that are snobs about the caliber that you use? Me personally, for many years, I've only used 9mm. For me personally. But at work, we went from the 38 to 40. So I am used to shooting bigger rounds, and but at the same time, I'm fine shooting any round, So I've shot 45s, shot 40s, shot 9mm, but like I tell somebody, you don't want to get hit by now one of them bullets coming out of that barrel, no matter what caliber it is. We got to remember that we're a nation of consumers, and it's all different levels. And we should be, if somebody is interested in get into the gun community, the 2A community, we need to help them out and not be snobs. We need to be patient with them. Make sure they get in the right training. If we see them do something wrong, hey, correct them. And maybe you can encourage them. If they do get a firearm that's just not the best, you just encourage them, hey, save your money and let's go and get you something. You might have to go with them and help them out. I know my sister, she came up from Memphis to a couple years ago because she kept telling me she wanted to get a gun, And I was like, what do you want? And she said she wants something she can put in her purse or, pretty much conceal. So when we met up that day, I told her, I asked her, I said, how much are you willing to spend? And she told me she didn't really have no limit. And I said, oh, okay. So me and her, I took her to a couple gun stores, and I didn't pressure her to buy at no gun store, but both of them pretty much had the same. The firearms she picked out, they both had them, but she ended up getting the 43X and ARP 15 and 556 223 556, and but she was she just didn't know what to get, and I just gave her the options. I didn't try to sway her one way or the other. It was up to her. She told me she was shooting before. She'd been to the range. She'd been out in the country shooting, so she was pretty good shooting. So I was like, okay, bet. And she picked out 43X and ARP, and that was it. And that's the type of stuff I like to do. You talk to me about guns, I can talk to you all day about ARs or guns, pistols, whatever. But that's what I like to do. And again, if you do decide to go for your first gun, go all out, there are options where you can lay away it. Most places give you 60 days to get it out of layaway, but as long as you paying on it every 30 days, they'll work with you. You can finance it, which, a pistol is not that it's not that dire need to finance. But yeah, and if you know what this box is. I'm telling you, I'm not a snob whatsoever. I can't show you the front of it because it got a price tag on it. But yeah, not a snob whatsoever. And some of your cheaper end guns, they're the best ones. This saw right here, all I know is go bang every time. And I got this like last year during the Christmas holiday sale. If you know, you know. But I got this. It's clear, y'all. It's clear, no magazine. But for the I don't like the there's some things I don't like about it, but at the same time, for the price, I can't complain. And then for the reliability, you can't complain about that. I can't complain about that either. So yeah, and that's one of the cheapest firearms I do have, right there. I think that the Ruger cost more than that. So but anyway, us as a gun community, we gotta stick together because we're already facing an uphill battle. Every time we look up, and we have to stand together, or they will try to suppress our 2A rights. And we should want to welcome new people into the community. But put down in the comments what you don't like about the gun community. And like always, like, subscribe, and comment. Y'all have a good day.